Hi my crafty friends, welcome to the Upcycle Design Lab. Today I thought I would bring spring indoors by making some simple vases out of aluminum cans. I'm starting with 3 cleaned and empty cans that I've removed the tops from, and I like to use a tool called the draft top, but there are other ways to remove the tops of your aluminum cans, and I will link to a video that I made on 3 different ways you can remove the tops of your aluminum cans in the description box of this video. So the first thing I want to talk about is the different shapes that you can make. Obviously, you can leave the cans just as is with the top off. A second option is that you can gently kind of crush the can. If you do this, you want to be careful not to squeeze it so much that you actually break the can, because then it will leak. The last option is to adjust the height of the can by making it shorter. I have some CDs, you could use books, whatever. You want to stack them up, and they need to be slightly less than half the height of the can. Then I'm just going to take a Sharpie and I'm going to draw a line all the way around my can. And flip it over and draw another line. You want to make sure that there's a little bit of space between your lines, because that's where you're going to make your initial cut. So I'm just going to cut my can in half now between these lines, and then I'll trim with some scissors to make a nice clean line on my Sharpie marker lines. And then to fit the 2 pieces together, I'm just going to cut a slit on the top of the can and slide it over the bottom piece of the can. You can also add handles and lids if you're interested, but that's a separate tutorial which I will also link to in the description. The next thing I want to do is add some texture to the cans, and to do that I'm going to mix up a very simple texture paint using coffee and some primer paint left over from a house project. There are, of course, lots of recipes for texture paint. You can just use whatever you have. If you don't have coffee grounds and primer paint, I'm sure you can find a recipe online utilizing things that you do have on hand. To make the coffee texture paint, I use about a 3-to-1 ratio of paint to coffee grounds. So I'm just going to use this technique to put some texture on all 3 of my different shaped cans. I've covered several different cans with texture paint, and now comes the fun part where you get to add some embellishment. For my first design, I decided just to use some Dollar Tree twine on 3 crushed cans, and I glued the twine on in some different patterns with some E6000 glue and finished them with a coat of matte Mod Podge. To make design number 2, I used some air dry clay and made a design using a silicone mold and attached the pieces with some E6000 glue. Once the clay was dry, I added more coffee texture paint, and then I wanted to add a little additional color, so I brushed on a coffee wash that I made with water and instant coffee. To finish and seal the paint and the clay, I have used a coat of Deco Art Duraclear gloss varnish. My next experiment was to use some toilet paper. At first I wasn't sure that I liked it, but I did like the edge that it left, so I decided just to add paper to part of the can. And then I used the coffee wash again, and also a gold paint pen to accentuate the edges. I also decided to use this similar technique on another can that I had put extra coffee grounds on, so I didn't like the look of just the coffee grounds, and so I decided to make a set with the toilet paper. And in this case I used a black marker instead of the gold paint pen to accentuate the edges and finish off the top rim of the can. The last step was to add the finish, and again I used the Deco Art Duraclear gloss varnish. For my 4th experiment, I decided to add some hot glue and just let it sort of drip down the sides of the can and around the top rim. And I decided to do a set of 3 again. And once the hot glue had cooled off, I added my metallic spray paint colors to each one of the cans. I could have left them with just the metallic finish, but I like to add sort of more of an antique finish to tone down the shiny brightness of the spray paint. And for this finish, I just brushed on a little bit of black acrylic paint and then dabbed it off with a paper towel. For design number 5, I was trying to experiment with some extra color, and I added this pink paint to the can, which was just way too much for me. So I toned it down a little bit with a light coat of the coffee texture paint, and I still didn't like it very much, so I decided just to kind of go crazy and add a whole lot more color. So I decided to test out a technique that I had seen other crafters do, and I just squeezed a bunch of paint onto a piece of saran wrap and then rubbed the paint into the can with the saran wrap. I probably could have left it this way, but I did decide to go ahead and put a finishing coat on it, and for this I used my gloss Mod Podge. I think this last design might actually be my favorite. I kind of thought it was fun using the hot glue drip, so I decided to add it to one of my crushed cans. And then using my gloss Mod Podge, I added a coat to the top of my cooled off hot glue and sprinkled on some pink glitter. Once the glue was dry, I put another coat of Mod Podge on the whole can to secure the glitter in place. So that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed today's content, please give it a thumbs up. Also, I'd love to have you join my YouTube family. If you haven't already, you can click that subscribe button. Let me know which design was your favorite in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you back here soon in the lab for my next experiment.